Good morning. Hello. So pleased to have you on this Sunday morning on Bondi Beach in a lounge studio. Representing Dunera and Moira Blumenthal Productions, I have with me Brian Fine.
Hi, good morning.
And Tim McGarry.
Hi.
We're going to have some conversation and some chat, and it's going to be pretty casual. We're pretending we're in my lounge room. So I'm pretending I'm in my lounge room. Brian,
Yes,
I've known you for many years, probably over 40. South Africa, Australia. And I've known you as a businessman, and I've known you as a man who does a lot of charity and a lot for the community. Why writing?
Moira, I think we need a little bit of history over here because, and Moira forgets, why writing? Moira came to me one day, or she didn't come to me, she came to my wife, and she said, there's a writing course. One of the playwrights, Tim Daly.
I did forget.
Yes, she forgot. Is doing a course in writing, and I'd like you to come. Well, of course, she wouldn't have invited me because I was not the guy to invite. And my wife Wendy said to me, come on. Anyway, she dragged me to this course, and that's when I started. But I need to give you a little bit of history, if you give me a few minutes, of my history. Why I never wrote before is I had a problem as a kid in reading. I have a visual problem and I'm slightly dyslexic. And so reading was never my forte, and of course I battled with English. So that was my history. So whenever it came to writing, I shied away from it. And now you took me to a course, and suddenly this playwright, Tim Daly, is standing over my shoulder and he's looking down and he's saying, well, what are you trying to do? I said, I'm trying to think of a word. And he said to me, Brian, you don't write little sentences. Think of yourself as a dam with all these ideas. Open up, let it flow. Don't worry about the spelling. Don't worry about the commas and the full stops. Just let it flow. And suddenly I felt that
Carry on, I'm sorry,
I felt that I had been given some godlike power, because here I was writing and I had the ability to make a person tall or short, fat or thin, black or white, rich or poor. And so I had this sort of godlike thing. Let me tell you one. I'll just go back before I finish here. My first thing that I wrote for Tim went like this because I had this newfound power. So I'm writing a story about a man who's on his way to collect his lotto winnings. And he's in Bondi, just by the way, he happens to be in Bondi, and he's standing there and he sees the news agency across the road and he starts moving. And of course, there's a bus coming down the road, the number 68, and because I'm writing, I made it to 69. I'm really having fun. And the bus is coming at him and he's going to get his lotto winning. Oh, and he just jumps out the way and the bus misses him. But there's a Mercedes coming at a hell of a rate down the road. And I thought, well, what do I do here? So anyway, the brakes went on and I missed him by a mile.
Wow.
An inch, sorry. Okay, so here I am. Doing all these things, the man gets back on the pavement, he goes into the lotto office and he says, I got the numbers, I got the numbers. So the lady looks, she says, no, this is last week's. And he says, oh, my heart. And she says, I'm only kidding. So you have a lot of power to move the story, make a twist. Yeah. And that's how I started writing. I was just having a lot of fun.
Can I just tell you that this is exactly what this wonderful story, and Brian telling it with so much passion, is exactly what this new program is all about, that we're here to talk about today, is the power of storytelling and what it does for a person, the amount of connection that they find with their past through telling their stories. I had a meeting, the program, by the way, is called Our Second Stage, and it's starting this coming Wednesday, as you probably know, at the Ara Theatre, where we are going to be presenting a play reading of Brian's new play, not the story you just told, but another story called Bridging the Gap. And Tim McGarry is directing it, and I have been producing it. But prior to this, I've been talking to a playwright, and he was talking about a past story that he's put down into a short story for next year. And he said, until I actually started writing it and considering the details, I did not really put myself in the position of how my father felt or how I felt when I sat next to him in synagogue, and didn't realize at the time, but realized it in retrospect, that this was going to be the last time I was sitting with my father. I never made contact with that feeling until I started writing about it. And that's what the program is doing. So, Brian, that's a wonderful introduction into who you are. So tell me again, why writing and why this story?
Okay, well, this story, I'm talking to the camera.
And I'm talking about Bridging the Gap.
Okay.
Not the one about the guy with the lotto. Because that's a great one.
No, that's fine. I'm good with that, because Bridging the Gap is, I guess go back to Tim Daly, and he said, open up the dam and let it flow. So what happened, the story behind the story is, one day I was down in Coogee, outside the Coogee Bay Hotel, and there were some guys coming out of the hotel. They'd been drinking a little bit, slightly inebriated, and there was another fella out there, and he went up to them. He looked a bit ragged. He might have been homeless, I don't know. And he said to them, can you help me out, mate, with some money? And one of these youngsters abused him, almost kicked him, said, get the hell out of here, go get a bloody job. And I was standing back and watching this all happening. I guess he then turned around and he said, have you any idea who you're talking to? And this youngster, of course, abused him, go to hell. And, if you don't get that out of my face, I'm going to smash you to pieces. And the man walked away. I can't remember if I gave him $2 or I didn't give him $2. It's not quite clear in my mind. But I remember going home and I was really moved by this whole incident, because the way I see things, people have the right to ask for help. You have the right to refuse, but you don't have the right to abuse. And so I went home that night, and I really felt for this guy. And I was lying in bed, and I said, why are you feeling like this? Who was this man that he turned around and he said, have you any idea who I am? And this is basically the genesis of the story, because there was only one man in the story. And I started to think about him and who he could be. And with my newfound powers, I could have made him a king, or I could have made him a pauper. So I started to create a character.
That's wonderful. Tim, this is interesting what Brian is saying, because you are now, you have a history of being an actor, trained as an actor. You have worked with me many times with much joy, I hope.
Absolutely.
And you've been a director, but recently, and you also established Monkey Bar, which was the premier children's theatre company in this country, touring company. You did that together with Eva and Sandy.
Yeah.
And then about a year ago, you left.
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Two years ago, I left. Yeah.
And I remember us having a conversation, and you feeling a little bit lost. Where were you going to go? Well, you found your way pretty quickly. And you landed up doing really what Brian is talking about. You started taking stories and developing them and doing a lot of dramaturgy work on novels.
Yeah.
The latest, the first one that's already about to be launched at the Queensland Theatre Company is a remarkable story. Do you want to tell us a little bit about
the story
your process, because this process was very spontaneous,
For sure.
was loosened by another writer, Timothy Daly.
I might do what Brian did, and I'll go one step back or a couple of steps back and explain that, as an actor, what I've been doing in the 90s, there was a theatre company down in Wollongong called Theatre South, and much of their work was around developing new work out of Australian literature. And I really found a love for reading other people's stories and then transporting it into another creative kind of element, which is page to stage. And so in that kind of background as a young actor working with Des Davis, the director there at the time, I really got to understand the process of developing from page to stage. And then with Monkey Bar, when we set Monkey Bar up, that was specifically to look at developing works from young people's literature. And we developed that over many, many years, and the company still does that. And we toured it nationally and internationally. And then when I left, I really wanted to kind of keep going on that vein, but looking at more adult work, looking at things that are a little bit harder hitting. The issues were a little bit broader, if you like, older. And I came across a work called Boy Swallows Universe, which many, many people out there have probably read. Yeah, Boy Swallows Universe is a wonderful book. It's written by the wonderful Trent Dalton. And I had a very good relationship with HarperCollins, who were the publishers, who are the publishers of Boy Swallows Universe. And I went to Harper and I said, I'm leaving Monkey Bar and I'm really looking to do this. And she said, come in have a chat with us. So I went in and I came away with a stack of books this high. And at the bottom was Boy Swallows Universe. And it was like this thick, everyone knows it's a chunky book, 400 page. And I thought, I might start at the top and I'll work my way down. And Jackie at HarperCollins kept ringing, saying, have you read Trent's book yet? I said, no, I'm getting there. And she rang again have you read Trent's book yet? I said, no, I'm getting there. She said, well, it's going to be published in about 3 weeks' time. And I'll tell you, that's the one. You need to read it. So I went, all right. So we went to Queensland for my partner's 50th birthday. We went to Queensland and set in Queensland. And I thought, now's the time. I'll take it's a Queensland work. We're going to Queensland. I will sit by the pool and I will read this. I started on the Monday morning and I finished on the Tuesday afternoon. I barely put it down and I just fell in love with it. And what I fell in love with was the story of this boy's life. And it's basically a true story. And again, it harks back to what I love as an actor and what I love as a creative person. It's about bringing people's stories to life, whether it's on film or stage or through other mediums, through reading. And that's what took me to that work. So that's the work I've been mostly working over the last 2 years. And then, of course, I'm currently working on Colin McCulloch's Tim, which is a classic work about a young man with a disability. And I work part-time in disabilities as well. That's my other job as an actor. I work in group homes and I've done that for 30 years doing that. And so I have a great affinity with the whole issues that surround people living with a disability. And so that book was always in my mind to do a long, long time ago. So I'm working on a modern day version of that work as well. So it's story that I love, and it's personal connection to story. With Trent's, it was around the relationship he had with a man called Slim Halliday, and that reminded me of my relationship with my own grandfather. And with Tim, Colin McCulloch's Tim, it's the whole story around a person with a disability and the battles that they go through about being accepted as a part of our community, no matter what their issue in life is, which is what attracted me to Brian's work.
Lovely. Okay, so that's a wonderful segue to how about this as a pairing? And that's something that I'm good at. I'm good at casting and I'm good at pairing. Okay, and this was, I think, something that had to be. So unusual, because we've got a Jewish man who represents Judaism and is very involved with the Jewish community. And we've got somebody who I think is probably agnostic, or...
I think agnostic is a good... I grew up in a very strict Catholic, from a Catholic background.
But you've got a family who has got Jewish links.
Yes. So I as many people call themselves cultural Jews, I think I'm a cultural Catholic. Right. So I understand the culture around it, but I question the many aspects of religion, which is what we all do, which is a good thing to do. Who knows where I'll be when I turn 90 and
we're watching, Tim. We're watching. So you landed up with a position that you had the story which you sent to me. Okay, there was no platform for it 5 years ago because it was all of 20 pages long, if that. And then along came the new platform, our second stage, and I said, Brian, we want to look at this story. So what was it that then went from that meeting or that observation? What then developed? What happened? Did it come out in a flood, or did you work on it?
Look,
and what's it about? What's
okay.
it about? What's Bridging the Gap about?
I wrote this play, and only to put in my bottom drawer, okay?
Yep, like
drawer 3,
my
where they all go.
Yep.
And because Moira had sent me on this mission to learn to write a little bit, I went back to her and I said, look, Moira, give me an opinion of this play. And Moira had a look at the play and she said, I like it. And I was waiting for the but. And she said, but it's a bit short for a long play. And is it authentic? Does it have the authenticity? And that was a good thing, because it didn't. What happened to me in just after that period, I was very, very fortunate. As the president of a Rotary Club, I was invited to a day with the police up at the Gap Park.
Wow.
And we spent an entire day with me in this group were people from the government, from Beyond Blue, Black Dog Institute, and so people that were really had a great understanding of suicide. And we went from A to Z, from having a lecture in the police station, going up to the Gap Park, I should call it, and there we experienced a simulated rescue.
Right.
So on that day, what happened is police cars came rolling up, ambulances came, the rescue people came, helicopters arrived, drones arrived.
Wow.
But we saw it all. But there was one thing that actually happened. They challenged us. And of course, it was a crazy challenge. They took one of the policemen and put him over the fence.
Wow.
And they said to us as a group, we want you each individually to go and try and talk that person back over the fence. One by one, we went to try and do this. And it was quite ridiculous, because anyone with brains knew that this guy's not coming over the fence, and he would just stand and he'd look at you, or he'd say, get away, or you don't know, or I'm not talking to you. And it was impossible to break into this man. But the feeling that we each had, I remember one of the guys with us had tried, he had now walked away, and he was so involved, it was so real, that he started shouting back at this guy over the fence, please, please come over the fence, like, I'm going to save your life. So it was an amazing experience. And so I walked away from that day with a great understanding of, call it the processes that are in an event at the Gap Park. I learned a lot about the cameras. I learned about the feelings, and I was able to speak to the rescue people. And what they actually did, they picked up a rubber body from the bottom. So they abseiled down the cliffs, the whole box and die. And I guess I walked away from that. And since that day, we have supported the people around me through our Rotary Club, through the Alte Zagen group that we have, through Jewish Care, supported the eastern suburbs suicide prevention. So we got involved in that, and Jewish suicide prevention in the eastern suburbs. So now the story goes.
Yes, so that's the one aspect. But to me, as a producer, I knew there was a suicide, obviously, but that wasn't the thing that attracted me more than anything to the play. Oh. The thing that attracted me to the play were the two characters. Mm. And that's really, people often say, how do you choose plays? It's easy to talk about this one, but every play has got an element that has to appeal to a producer before you go through the horrendous process of producing. Okay? And the thing that attracted me to Bridging the Gap, it says it in the title actually, you know, Bridging the Gap, which has also got some sort of a political connotation. And here you've got two characters. Why did you choose those two characters? One a Jewish boy and one an Indigenous elder. How come you had such diversity in this very small thing? Was it realistic that these two characters could come together like you've been describing, talking over the fence and saying, come back? Why did you choose him?
Well, Moira, I'll just go a little bit backtrack to what you said, what I was talking about, that experience that I had of talking to somebody. And I needed these two characters I needed the one man to break down and be able to speak to the character that was sitting there. And so I needed a dialogue. The fact that originally the man that I'd seen at the Coogee Hotel was Indigenous. And I thought, well, it would be nice if I could have an Indigenous person, because what you see is not what you get. And the other person could have been Jewish, he could have been Greek, he could have been Italian or Lebanese. I had a greater understanding of what it would be like as a Jew. Yeah. But coming from a strong community was what I needed. And so this thing started to form. And I spent a few hours at the Gap just sitting there and watching people and trying to find a character.
So, Tim, while we're on the subject of the characters, because that's really what you deal with as a director, you know, the major focus is on the plot and the characters and why they're there and what they're trying to achieve.
Absolutely.
Did those two characters in this situation sound real to you in your inner ear?
Absolutely, completely. Moira sent me the play, the very early version of it, and I remember coming back to her and going, wow, who's this guy? And she went, you know Wendy, it's Wendy's husband. I went, wow, this is fantastic. This has got such a raw kind of sense of reality about it. And what I loved about it was the beautiful simpatico that kind of happened between these characters, not at the same time, which is important, but by the end, they reach a kind of an understanding. And I just thought they were completely credible, completely real. I could completely see that happening. I have very dear friends who are Indigenous elders, and one of them is going to be performing. It's taken the role of that character in your play, and you know, from the other point of view, I grew up as a gay man in a very religious background, and so I could understand the young man's story as well. And I've seen many people go through that similar story, so they were completely credible, completely, absolutely, 100% real to me.
Okay, so you open a lot of doors now. Now I know that Frederick, who's
Frederick Koppelway,
who is
Indigenous
actor acting as an Indigenous man, and there's certain parts of the plot that we won't talk about because we want to leave it as a surprise.
Absolutely, yeah, good.
But you did some work with Brian and you did some work with Frederick.
I did.
What did Frederick bring at that stage of the script development stage?
Yeah, well, I was a bit nervous sending it to Fred because he's a very dear friend, and he himself started Moogle and Performing Arts, so he has a very good ear for an eye for script and a very strong opinion about how Indigenous people absolutely are portrayed within theatre and the community. And he read it and he went, oh, that's great. He had a whole lot of notes from a theatrical point of view. And I said to him, in terms of the language from an Indigenous man, is there anything that you think we should change? He said, I changed that word there and changed it to this.
Really?
I went, oh, okay. Is that all? He went, yeah, I think the rest of it reads really credibly. It's really fantastic. He said, you know, there's a few little things dramatically that we can work on, which we've worked on and we'll work on more before people get to see the final piece. But he really brought I was kind of relieved going, oh, wow, that's good. That's kind of a tick of approval, because you want people from whichever community, and I'm happy to tick the other side of the community, but it was good for him to tick that side within the script, that the authenticity was there and that we were on the right track and everything we were going to build on was going to be gold.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of anxiety as I spoke to you and I spoke to Tim. I said, look, I don't want to offend anybody, so I'd like you to take the script if I've written anything that upsets the Indigenous person, I'd like to change it. If I upset anyone in the gay community, I'd like to change it, because it wasn't the plan. It was because,
let's get a little bit closer to home now. You're Jewish and I'm Jewish. Okay?
yes,
We managed as far as the Aboriginal background, or what am I trying to say? What I'm trying to lead into, content, is we both know that there is, the basis of the story is that this young man is gay. That's been in the publicity, so we don't have to hold back on that. And he is nervous to come out. And by the way, today is National Coming Out Day. Did you know that?
National Health.
That was yesterday.
Sorry.
Today is National Coming Out.
Okay.
So
I didn't know.
we're spot on. We tick all sorts of boxes.
Great, good. That's good to know.
So he was very nervous about coming out as a gay man because his father was a rabbi. Now, what thoughts do you have about that? I mean, I don't know what the audience are going to make of it, but what do you as a writer, how are you going to explain this to your rabbi, if you need to explain it?
I don't think I really need to explain to anybody, because what I'm trying to portray there is that you've got this conflict of thousands of years of tradition,
right?
And
the reality
and then you have a father's love for a child.
Yeah.
And so there's this balance, and I guess in many families around the world, and certainly here in Sydney, people have been conflicted.
Absolutely.
And really not known what to do. But at the end of the day, and I mean, we live in different times, and acceptance is a lot easier today than it had been in the past. And so I can't tell you what happens, but you'll have to come and pay. But it's real. It's very, very real.
What about the question of suicide, Brian? Because I know that that's not well looked in the Jewish religion. I mean, we had a common friend who suicided when we were quite young.
Yes.
And it was quite disturbing to us personally and to the community. And the thing that stuck with me more than anything, besides this huge loss to family and community, was that he wasn't supposed to be buried in the same grave as the rest of the community. Were you aware of that?
Moira, I don't like to get into religious things because times have changed as well. And so I think that the religious leaders look slightly differently. There's always a different way. There's never one way of looking at something. There's never one answer. And so I just go with the flow. I'm not pulling in any direction, but it's a very difficult one, and it's very hard. You take a person from a very religious family who understands it and understands how his parents might be feeling about it or how his community is, but sometimes they're not right.
So we've touched on a couple of contentious issues up until now. We're about halfway in our conversation, and if you people out there are listening and you want to put another point of view or want to ask questions, please go into the chat room, which we will pick up and come back with our point of view. Right. So
I've got an interesting point on that. Can I say that? Well, as coming from a very religious background and having to come out, there is and what Brian was saying, I completely concur with, and that is that we go through all sorts of things in our what we think people are thinking, and what we think about the religious background, or what we think about how it will be perceived if we are true to the person that we really are, is often very different than the reality. And the reality for me was that I was conflicted in telling my family because it was very much against what we've been grown up to be taught.
As a Catholic,
we were brought up, and Catholics around suicide has the same thing. You can't be buried in the same area, and so I was incredibly conflicted. No, I didn't tell my parents until quite late down the track. But the interesting thing for me was how I perceived it and what was going through my mind in terms of how that, will I be rejected? Will the community shun me? Will I not be allowed to see my brothers and sisters? Will I not be allowed to be involved in family events? Will I be completely living a separate life, which has happened to many, many gay people from all walks of life? I remember the day that my father found out, and my mother, and my father walked down the backyard. He had a cigarette.
Yeah.
He came back in, and his words were, "You're my son, and I love you." Now I could cry just thinking about that moment. And
that's wonderful, so much
and for me, that said it all. You know, that said it all. But and my mother was the same. I think my mother found it a little bit harder to deal with. My father, who I was most worried about, was the one who was completely accepting. And it's about unconditional love, no matter what religion you are. And he said this, and his words to me were, and I think I brought up religion, my mother brought up religion, and we talked about that. And he said, when it all said and done, your conscience is your religion. Forget about being a Catholic. Forget about that. Forget about what you were taught. Think from your conscience. Follow your conscience. And if your conscience is telling you something, then listen to it. Because that's your religion.
Wonderful.
That should be your religion.
Wonderful.
And I've held that forevermore. But the advice I got a piece of advice before I told them, and it was the best piece of advice. And I'd like to share it for anyone out there who may have a person in this situation. And the advice I got, and it was spectacular, and I've told many people many times, and that was a very dear friend of mine, Damien, said to me, "Have you told your family yet?" And I said, "No, I haven't." And he said, "How do you think it will go?" And I kind of relayed a few ideas how I thought it would go. And he said, "Can I give you a piece of advice?" I said, "Yes." He said, "The very best time to tell them, I think, is to tell them when you're not in crisis. Because if you feel a crisis around it, they will accept it as a crisis. Once you get through and accept the point that this is who you are, and you accept who you are in this life, and you're settled and you're calm about that, and you present them in a calm, settled way, they will probably respond in the same way that you give it." And that was absolutely the best advice that I could have ever had.
So, Tim, you've opened up another issue now. So we've got the religious aspect. Thank you for sharing that with us. We've also got the aspect of suicide. What would you tell people who land up in this situation? Brian, I mean, you must have given it a lot of thought. I mean, you went to that fence. You tried to talk somebody down. I don't know if you achieved it.
Of course not.
But really, what are that audience going to take away from the situation? You know, why does the Aboriginal elder have success? I wonder. Because he does.
Because at the moment we don't know, and you'd have to see the play to actually understand that.
Good point.
But there was conversation. There was
conversation,
yeah.
But one needs to understand that we tend to see things and we tend to stereotype. And so we have a picture of a person. This is what they are. And here I had two people, and my intention was to take those two people and change them around so that what you saw was not what you were going to get. Okay. And so you're asking me the question, what would I like people to take away? I guess it is that acceptance of people, and that everyone has a core, and it's very different in some are extrovert, some are introvert, but there's something in everybody. Don't sum them up from one look, because it's not going to work.
But there was an element in the play, there is an element in the play where the elder, whatever his reasons were, which we're not discussing now, was willing to talk and spend a long time with this guy, and was willing to actually be abused at a certain level. So there is to me, one of the things that I take out of the script, out of the context of the script, is if you're in a situation, however traumatic, you have to find somebody to talk to. Talking, conversation. You know, it's no good because you're talking about perspectives. Things are not always the way they seem. You know, you're talking about religion, you've got to get another perspective, and the only way you're going to do that is by talking. Is that correct, sir?
Can I say, I think it's about personal story. How they connect eventually is personal story.
Are you talking about the play now?
The play, but I'm talking about life. We connect with personal story. And I agree, it's about talking. It should never be too late. We don't want it ever to be too late for anyone. And I completely, 1000% concur with what Brian said. Let just people be who they are. who cares if they're not hurting anybody, if they're going about their life and they're contributing to their own life and they're contributing to society. Who cares whether they like to stand on their head in the corner for an hour a day?
Exactly.
Who cares? Like, stop judging. We're so quick to judge people. A friend of mine, a well-known theatre maker, went and interviewed a lot of the homeless people in Hyde Park. And there's a man who used to be there many, many years ago. You probably remember him. I remember. He had a great big cut. He had massive, and he had the most pungent smell around him. Anyway, Ira went to interview him, and he said, "Do you know that man has 6 degrees?
Wow.
He's got a master's. He's a very learned man, and he's chosen this life."
Wow.
And I thought, perception, reality.
So we sort of are covering things quite intimately and in depth, and we're pretty sure that listeners out there, we love having you share with us. If there is anything you would like to ask Brian or Tim, or share any of your own experiences, please go onto the chat show, the chat room. I nearly said the chat show, and it will come through to the studio here, and we'll be able to answer your questions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we've got a show on. We've got 2 days of rehearsals now, Monday and Tuesday. These are not rehearsals as we know them, Tim, because
No.
the end result that we're looking for with this program is a play reading. So what's the difference? What is that? We're also going to, besides having 2 live play readings, we're going to be producing a podcast.
That's correct.
Of the play.
Yeah.
So what is going to be different about these rehearsals from 4 weeks that we normally have for a season of a play?
So generally in a 4-week rehearsal, we would spend the first 3 or 4 days around the table, going through the script line by line, word by word, scene by scene. We'd discuss it, we'd work out what people's objectives are, and you go through the whole gamut of that. Then you'd get up on the floor and you'd start to move it, and then you'd finally get to the point where actors had learned their lines and they throw the script away, and you'd have the play. In terms of creative development on a script, generally what we do, and kind of I've got that in you're acting as the dramaturg on this script. So the dramaturg, the director, and the actors sit around and we read the script. The end of that first reading, we'll go, okay, so what's it about? We'll open the floor up to that, and the actors say, I think it's about this, I think it's about this, I think it's about that. They'll bring up all their thoughts, we'll throw our thoughts in. Then we'll just go through scene by scene. And because this is a 1-act play, it's a little bit different. So what we will do, which I have already done, which we will do in the room, is we break a play up into beats, chunky beats. And what I mean by a beat is when the subject, we're talking about one subject and the subject kind of shifts or changes, and then we go into another beat. So we'll just go beat by beat by beat through the whole, now 25 pages, I think it is, 30 pages. And we will work through line by line, moment by moment, what each character's saying, what their objective is, and what they think they're saying. And we'll look probably closer at the dialogue around the Indigenous man, because I know Fred has some more thoughts about that. He said, I prefer to discuss that in the room and see how that works. And then at the end of the day, because we only have 2 days, we'll go through a process of that, and then we'll read the kind of worked version at the end of the day. Then the next day, we will do the podcast. So the actors will come in the morning, we'll read through the script a couple of times, we'll get closer to the beats, we'll get their energy kind of moving, then we'll record it. And then by lunchtime, we will have recorded it. So it's really 1 day rehearsal that we're working on. Then in the afternoon, the actors will get up and we will do a little bit of movement around the script, and around, we'll have basically some chairs, and the platform will be raised up a bit, and we will rehearse for a couple of hours just with some chairs with their scripts in their hands, and that will become a moved reading. And that's what audiences will get to see. They'll get to see the moved reading of the piece that we've got to by the Tuesday afternoon.
So part of this program is to work on a developmental concept. So in other words, we get a raw script from Brian Farm.
Yep, or anyone in the community who's got a script.
Anybody in the community, and we've got a lot of scripts.
We've got a lot
of
them
work.
in.
Yep. How did it feel to you working with a first-time playwright? And you can be totally open.
I'll be completely open, Brian. It didn't worry me. I didn't even think, to be honest, I didn't even think about it.
Good.
I didn't even think Brian's written one play, 5,000 plays. Doesn't matter. It's all about the story on the page on that day. So I didn't even consider it.
All right.
Didn't make any difference to me whatsoever.
That's a bit of a relief. Brian, from your point of view, I think you've been a bit anxious about handing your baby over to us. Is that correct? Are you a bit nervous about what we're going to do with your baby, because I know that playwrights do get nervous.
See, I know I'm going to have a baby. I'm just not sure if it's a boy or a girl. So I don't know how it's going to come out. I mean, I know how I feel. If I were the director, I guess I have a feel for what it's about.
Yeah.
You're molding it and doing it, and I have every confidence. As I said to you in our first meeting, I said, go for it. You feel you want to go in a direction, go in a direction.
And the interesting thing is, I'm talking on behalf of us, Moira, as directors and dramaturgs, we don't know how it's going to be on Wednesday afternoon because it's a process. It's all a process, and we will work through. We've got a rough idea. We've got a very strong idea about how it's going to be, of course. But what the actors will bring a whole new element, and that's really exciting because as soon as another element comes into the room, it creates another life around the story and gives the story a whole nother dimension. And that's what's exciting because you get to hear it out loud and you go, wow, I never would have. I know it's interesting because from the writing I've done and when I've been in developments, listening to actors, and I've been squirming in the corner going, I wonder how this will sound. And it's generally a great sense of relief because you go, well, listen to the way that actor's interpreted that line. I would never have put the emphasis there, but it works. How they've interpreted it is absolutely right.
Yeah.
It's so interesting giving it over. And I find that when it gets to the process of putting a show all the way through the process of rehearsals, when you give it to a designer and the designer gets hold of it, you go, I would never have imagined it to be in that setting.
Well, maybe just to clarify things, our relationship has been, I do not see myself as a playwright. I'm a person who wrote a play.
Very interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I met Tim and we had a long chat over a cup of coffee. We went for 5 minutes and we spoke for 3/4 of an hour or an hour. And we really got to know one another. And I think we have an understanding that Tim is a controller. I've given him the play. I'm very, very confident that Tim can do it. And I'm not protective. I'm not looking for any particular outcome. I just want it to be nice and hope everyone will enjoy it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm trying to understand the chat questions.
Do we have a question?
We've got a question, and by the way, this is from Debbie Sholem.
Yeah. Hi, Debbie.
Hi, Debbie. So apparently today all Jews can be buried together with Jewish suicide victims.
Right.
Okay, the question is, how important were the characters' religious or cultural beliefs about the afterlife, Jewish or Dreamtime indigenous, in developing the plot?
No, there was absolutely no references to that. I guess, the Dreamtime and Jewish philosophies were behind what was actually happening.
Well,
but certainly not beyond. It wasn't. The play is really not about suicide. It's part of the play, but it's not.
Can I just say something?
Can somebody check the chat? I don't know how to do that.
I can, but I'm coming close to the camera, everybody, and I need my glasses. I'm going to get my glasses. Can I just say though, in terms of that question, what was I going to say?
Sorry,
my brain. No, because we meet the characters at a point of crisis. So they don't get too philosophical in terms of religious background, in terms of how they feel philosophically, because we're seeing them at a point of crisis, and it's a very different conversation when you look at it from that point of view.
Okay, good.
I'll go near the chat. Sorry about me getting very close.
You know how to open the chat?
I can see it right here.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've got, I'm having a look here. So we've got Debbie's question, and we also have, that's all we have at the moment, I can see. Debbie's question.
Okay.
And Debbie just said, thanks for asking my question. And we're going to see her on Wednesday. We look forward to seeing you, Debbie. Thanks for the question. Any other questions coming through? I can sit here and look at them and read them. Oh, one question was, this is a very good question. Moira, how will the audience socially distance? Great question.
Very important. The people at the theatre, Monkey Bar residents at the theatre, and they are in charge of the covert situation. They've been to constant seminars and meetings, as all theatres have been keeping up to date with the COVID situation. So you will be separated by the 4 square metre rule. We've got a maximum, it's a 230 seat theatre. We only allowed about 80 seats. So you'll be well separated. The actors will be well distanced from you. Wearing masks is not mandatory. You can or you don't have to. The play is about 40 minutes long, we think. Since we've never done it, we're not sure. And half an hour to 40 minutes. And then there'll be a Q&A, similar to what's happening here, but much more open because you will have seen the play. So you will have questions which will probably be much more pointed than they are at the moment. So the COVID situation, we're very aware of it. You will be guided in. People won't be allowed to stand in the foyer. You will be taken through as you come and be put in your seats. With a lot of staff from a Monkey Bar and the Ara Theatre looking after us.
Fantastic. I have another question.
Another question, sorry.
There might be a question on parking.
Question on parking. There is a wonderful parking. Just follow the link which says how to get there. You go right down to Darlinghurst.
If you come down Liverpool Road and
Yeah.
turn right onto Harbour Street, Wilson Street parking on the left, and it's Wilson Street, Darling Quarter. If you go online, I think you can get. Oh, you don't need early bird. Yeah, you will for the tour. You can get early bird, or if you go online and book, I suspect it's a bit cheaper. There is another question, which or another.
Before you go, it's
Yes?
cheap enough. It's about $12.
$15 for the whole day,
Yeah.
and it could be
It's $12 a night.
$12.
At night.
The only thing with the $15 whole day, you have to be there before 9:30, and it doesn't start till 2.
Okay.
So that's an issue.
That's
with
$12
that's a
for
little
parking.
problem.
Well, I've paid $15 for the whole day. I've prepaid.
Oh, cool. You just have to arrive before 9:30
Yes.
for that to work.
Okay.
No. I've given my times.
Okay, cool. The other question that is, Booker Bay is cheaper. Someone's come and said that's absolutely correct. Arlene has mentioned that some people can't get there on Wednesday, and would we consider doing it again? But Moira, maybe this is a good time to talk again about the sound podcast and where they can find that when it's recorded.
As soon as we've done the sound podcast, there'll be a email which will go out to everybody on the database, which will have a link to the sound podcast, which you can just press on and listen to it. But the way things are going, Arlene, and the amount of response that we're getting, I think we're going to be doing these things again. I think we're still in the developmental stage. The same with the play that we did prior to Brian's. Ron Elisha's A Certificate of Life turned out to be an amazing piece of writing. And we did a wonderful podcast, and people really raved about it. So we're probably going to keep things in our basket to do again. This program is going to go on for, as long as I'm around.
Stick around.
So I'm sticking around. We've got some wonderful stuff happening in the remainder of the year, and we are wonderfully excited about being linked with Dunera because of this sort of situation, that we can meet with people on these sort of platforms. So yes, I think I answered the question. Did I?
You did.
Yes. Anything else?
We have 10 minutes to go. Any other burning? We have no more burning questions here, but I'll keep my eye open.
All right. Let me see.
Anything else?
I have got. Think we've covered everything. Oh yes, I have got a question for Brian. Brian.
Yes.
The news is out that you've written a sequel to Bridging the Gap. My goodness, have we got a new career starting here?
No.
Come on, Brian. Now you're a playwright.
You see, what happened when I went to Moira initially, you remember the big but we spoke about?
Yes.
But it's too short to be a long play and
Yes.
too long to be a short play.
Well,
And that's why it went into draw number 3. Okay. So having had that situation, I thought, well, maybe if I write a second act, which is the sequel, and I can turn
the tables.
the tables. So both of them have major twists,
Okay.
and
Okay.
Tim has read it, and I sent the sequel, and Tim approves.
That's
Moira,
lovely.
you
Haven't read it.
Moira hasn't read it yet.
Yeah.
It's not in Playanese, if that's a language. We have, I wrote it just like I felt, and I now have to just refine it so that an actor can read it, because the way that I write it sometimes is not. I remember, if you remember, the first time I presented Moira, I said, there's a man standing on top of the gap and the sun is shining and you can hear the waves behind. So I was trying to do all the direction in the play. Moira said, scrap all that rubbish, I'll do that. And so the sequel has a little bit of that, but I like it. I love the sequel, and a bit of work on it. Yeah, we'll make it into a full play or a sequel, whatever.
So part of our program, is there no more chats?
Let me have a look. I'm coming closer to everyone. Sorry about my face. The question from Arlene Bryan: has your research into your dad's life story had any bearing on this play, Bridging the Gap?
I don't know which Arlene it is, but
Arlene Schwartz.
Arlene Schwartz. Hi, Arlene. It's lovely to see you there. I hope you're feeling better. She's just had an operation. Wish you well.
Wish you well.
Well, no, I don't think so. It's just, I guess one of the things that my father always taught me was just to try and be accepting of people. We grew up in South Africa, and my father's position that he had was really working with a lot of people of color and stuff like that. And he would never say a bad word. And he always said, there's an acceptance of these people. And I guess his history as an orphan had taught him certain things. And maybe some of his values were passed on to me, but I try to accept as much as I can. I don't know.
Chairman of Rotary and co-founder of Alte Zagen. Oh, it's being humble. So we're just about done. I just wanted to remind you that we're still open for material, and we're wanting your stories in any format, whether it's a play, whether it's a monologue, an extract from a book that you've written, poems. We've got a couple of poems. And just
letters. People are writing letters.
We probably are going to do. There are a couple of evenings that we're planning. One is a South African evening with people who immigrated from Europe during the Holocaust to South Africa, which is quite interesting. And we've got a series that we're going to put together thematically. We've got some stories from children from Emmanuel School. And this is very interesting to me. One young writer who's written a wonderful piece called Mum. So we're going to try and explore getting more of those and putting them into the play reading. We've also got a couple of poems, and we've got a couple of monologues. So we're planning an evening of Come Listen to Our Stories, which will be 4 actors on the stage in spotlights and just taking the stories and monologues and creating an evening of people's stories. I think I've made that point now.
It's beautiful.
And it's now 5 minutes to go, so there's nothing more for me to say.
Will I check the chat?
Yep.
I'm moving forward. No, there is nothing more on the chat. But thanks for those questions. They're fantastic.
Yeah,
really fantastic.
Oh, and I've got a problem. How do we get out of here? How?
I think magic will occur, and I suspect there are people in other rooms here that might magically make this go away. But could we just say finally, thanks for joining us?
Yes, it was, and it's a great day down here in Bondi.
Beautiful.
And Moira is going to take us for coffee.
And we look forward to seeing you on Wednesday at 3 o'clock or at 7 o'clock at Darling Quarter Theatre.
Okay. Good. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Cheers.
And now?